So the site is located at Harriet Weeder Park, and this is a really significant fact because this complex will actually serve as the catalyst, or it will spearhead the restoration effort that will eventually realize Reeder Park, which for the majority of it is actually a degraded site in a wasteland. So we're not just talking about a building, we're talking about a 5 to 6 acre complex that will include an outdoor amphitheater, will include outdoor trails and native gardens, and trails and exhibits, and also plant nurseries that will ensure the propagation of native species. So this is one of the main identities of this site, that it's not just an interpretive center, but it's an active restoration and educational place where visitors will have the chance to have hands-on activities to take place, and hands-on activities that like cleanup efforts, weeding invasive plants, propagating and planting native species, and also taking care of these nurseries. This educational mission, these plans, activities, and the program really influenced the design of this complex, and it also drove the creation of these spaces that you see on the plan here. So the bulk of the 10,000 square feet center will be dedicated for exhibits and also activity areas. Why are you advancing? So it will have exhibit areas, we'll have also activity areas like a wet lab where we'll do water testing and also and DNA testing as well. We have a classroom for school kids. We'll also have a multi-purpose room for community events, for gallery exhibits. And so this will really be an amenity for OC Parks in the community. The remainder of the square footage is support spaces, so offices for the staff, restrooms, and storage areas. So inspired by this ecological mission of the Conservancy, we knew from the get-go that the building, the architecture, really needed to be in harmony with the landscape. And so we had really interesting discussions about the nature of how the building should sit on the land so that it wouldn't dominate it, and the physical versus visual impact of that building on the land. And we settled on what you see here, which is a combination of a landscape berm that rises up towards the building, and then a native roof. And this really creates an unassuming presence from the street, and it also orchestrates the sequence as you proceed from the arrival areas into the areas that are connected to the wetlands. So that's another major point of the design, is to connect visitors and the staff to nature. So the building frames through a breezeway, a gateway, so when you come out on the other side, you open up to views of the wetland beyond. And the other important thing too is that the idea of using the berm allows us to blend the building into the landscape without having to excavate a lot. So we're minimizing the physical impact of construction on the site, next to this important sensitive ecological reserve. In conjunction with the restoration of the native landscapes on the complex, will really add and enhance wild habitat area. And the native roof itself will actually help us offset the building footprint from the reduction of habitat area. And so that move is great, but we really have to ask ourselves, how do we create a complex and a building that would go beyond? How could it be a positive player and an active player perhaps into this regional ecosystem? And really that had to do with reducing our carbon footprint and achieving the highest sustainability and the highest green rating that we could. We're even thinking beyond LEED. And so here's the story. This kind of boring slide shows that we actually did our homework. That's why we had engineers on the team. This is our initial energy model. And to offset energy you really have to begin by reducing your demand for energy. And our hope here, the slide says, reaching net zero. We want to go beyond net zero. We actually want to generate more energy than we would consume and give back to the grid. And so you start doing that by reducing your demand. And with a one-story building, that's actually pretty achievable because we'll have top lighting. So during daylight hours, 100% of the building would be naturally lit. And we also have natural ventilation for conditioning the spaces, so we're not going to have any air conditioning in this building at all, which in Huntington Beach is easy to do. It's almost like cheating because there's like 2 days in the summer where it goes above 95. So, and then after you've done that, you've looked at these measures that are commonsensical, like for example, orienting the building so that you're optimizing solar exposure. So to control glare, and after you've done these things is when you look at how you can generate energy on the site. And so we've reduced our energy use intensity so much that actually with 1,000 square feet of photovoltaics, we can be energy neutral. And if we add more, let's say we add another 1,000 square feet on the roof or over the parking lot, we'd be producing more energy than we would consume on an annual basis. From a water standpoint, it's actually more difficult to achieve a net zero or neutrality in terms of the demand, but we're trying it. We're using measures that we have the Bolsa Chica Conservancy on board, like super high efficiency fixtures and also composting toilets. And we've been able to project reducing our water demand, our potable water demand from 670 gallons per week to about 180 gallons per week, which is really remarkable. And then we would offset this demand by looking at water harvesting on site. And there's two main strategies here. One is to harvest rainwater, and the other is to use gray water, which is the water that comes off of your sinks. And so that in conjunction with using drought-tolerant and native adaptive species, we would actually get really close to water neutral on this site also. And this photo that you're seeing over here in the lower right-hand corner is a photo of a rain storage tanks that are under a glass floor. And that's another really important part of the design, is to make the sustainability features of the building a part of the educational experience. We would want to interpret them and allow those to be something that would teach visitors and students going through the center on how to build more sustainably. And perhaps that is the greatest impact that this complex will have, is that it will help the Conservancy to educate future generations on the impacts of our actions on the sensitive ecosystems around us, the health of our oceans, and the natural environment. Thank you.